This next session is an example of a Gestalt approach.
Fritz Perls once said, "Wake up and come to your senses."
Gestalt is very physical, very sensory oriented, and it's about being in the now, being aware of what's happening in the body.
And really, so then what the therapist or the counselor or psychotherapist is watching for and listening for in the session are things that are happening in the now, emotion, and flashes of insight that might be happening.
Which is sort of interesting because it's sort of lots of parts that come together in the work, in Gestalt work, and it's all about integration. Gestalt is really about the whole, about integration.
Now in this upcoming segment, I'm working with Sydney, and it really represents Gestalt therapy accurately in the sense that it's a little bit spontaneous and unplanned. He starts by telling a dream that he'd had the night before, and from the dream we shift into the empty chair technique, which is a classic Gestalt technique.
That's right. One thing that's true about Gestalt work is it's not necessarily planned. Let's watch as John works with Sydney with some of these techniques.
And at the same time, I think there's an element of either perfectionism or something like that, that when I experience those moments, or I think I do, that it may get a little blown up in terms of its magnitude or overgeneralized in some way.
Okay.
So it can be, and that's why I guess laughter feels like the appropriate response as I wrestle with those disparities in some way.
And so the anxiety went kind of from the stomach to the chest, and then now it's sort of turned into laughter, feeling a little bit silly about it. I want us to try something, if it's okay. And one of the things in Gestalt therapy is that we do things that we call experiments.
Okay.
And so, if you don't mind, I'm actually going to get out of this chair.
Okay.
And we're going to do a thing that we call the empty chair.
Okay.
Technique. And I'll move back, and I hear two sort of distinct parts in there. One part being anxiety. And so I'd like you to put anxiety in this chair.
Okay.
Okay. And have you in that chair, and have you have a conversation with the anxiety in more of an active way.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I think so.
If at any point you have questions, let me know, and I'll sit back here and kind of, I'll make some comments as you talk to your anxiety.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
All
So
right.
anything I want to say to my anxiety?
Anything you want to say to it is a place to start.
Okay.
And then the anxiety will get a chance to speak as well.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
All right. So I'm slipping back here. And so we put the anxiety right here.
Okay.
And, or here.
Okay. Okay.
And you just tell the anxiety what you would like it to know.
Okay. I guess I would like you to know that I'm not always clear and sure as to why you show up and as to what your function is, if there is a useful function. I think sometimes a little bit of you might be fine, but a lot of you is not fine and is counterproductive in a way.
Kind of like, I don't know why you're here sometimes. Certainly, I don't know why a lot of you is here. Maybe a little bit of you is okay. Move over and be the anxiety and talk back to Sydney. What do you have to say to Sydney, who's now in that chair?
Well, Sydney, I guess I would say that I'm here to make sure that you do what you're supposed to do and that you stay on track and that you have some negative feeling, which is me, associated with behaviors that that don't fit with your values. So that's why I'm here, is to remind you of when your behavior doesn't fit well with your values. Well, I would respond to that by saying you have a good point. At the same time, you can be a little excessive sometimes. It's good for me to have reminders that encourage me to be motivated to align with what I believe and my values. And at the same time, sometimes you reach a point to where that isn't helpful anymore, where there's too much of you in the picture. Okay, so that is an interesting point. And I could see how too much of me could be debilitating. Too much of anxiety of me could be debilitating. And so perhaps, yeah, you have a good point. I'm not sure what else to say about that. Part of me wants to say, I will temper myself down a little bit, or tone it down a little bit, so that I'm not so in your face at times when maybe you need just a little bit of me, as you've made clear. So part of me wants to say that I'll temper it a little bit.
Let's go back to Sydney and just talk a couple minutes, or maybe just a few seconds, and then I want to guide you through another little piece of this.
Okay.
What comes up for you as you do this dialogue?
I think the first thing that comes up is seeing, or feeling, not just seeing, but I guess this feeling level of feeling like this anxiety is just another part of me that I, Sydney, have some measure of control over, that that perhaps I sometimes forget or am not aware of. That this is a part of me that sometimes I want to push away and say it's an external thing that's acting on my life in a way that has negative impact sometimes. And through this empty chair activity, it feels as if verbalizing from the standpoint of anxiety makes me feel like it's just a part of me, and like other parts of me, I have some self-determination in how it shows up, to what degree, and see the utility of that voice within certain boundaries, I guess, and limitations.
Okay. So what I'd like you to do is to talk again to the anxiety. Begin by saying, thank you, anxiety. I hear you wanting to be helpful.
Okay.
And then maybe ask the anxiety, are you worried that I might not live up to my own values?
Okay.
And just try to, again, find your own words, I guess, for that, but that kind of message. And then go over and be the anxiety.
Okay. Okay. So, anxiety. I appreciate your concern for me and wanting to make sure that I live in alignment with my values. And I thank you for that, for keeping me on track in that regard. And I also hear that you're concerned that without doing that, or without a certain degree of that, that I will slip in some way.
I'd like to hear what anxiety has to say in response.
So I hear what you're saying, Sydney, and I think that this discussion between us has been good, in the sense that it lets me know that I play an important role in your life, of being there to serve as a motivator, as even an inspiration perhaps in some way, but also that I can overstep my bounds. And so thank you for sharing that with me, as this discussion helps me figure out how much of me is the right amount, how much is too much and is unhelpful.
Mm-hmm. So while you're in the anxiety chair, anxiety, I heard Sydney saying to you that he appreciates you.
Mm-hmm.
He values you.
Mm-hmm.
And thanked you. And what does that feel like to you? Anxiety.
To anxiety.
What's it feel like?
I think I kind of smile, I guess, because I feel like perhaps I've been told by Sydney that you shouldn't be here, you should be gone, abolished from, you know, existence in some way. Yeah, so that's the first thing that comes up for me.
In some ways it feels validating?
Yeah, like it's okay for me to be here.
Yeah.
As part of you, as part of your life, in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have a purpose, you have a function.
I have a purpose and a function, yes. As opposed to being in this tug of war, in a way, where Sydney's always trying to kick me out.
As we were watching the preceding segment, Rita, it reminded me of how important it is for Gestalt therapists to not interpret, even though sometimes there's a tug in that direction.
Oh, yeah.
And I felt like I might want to tell Sydney what I thought of some of the things that he was doing and saying, what it might mean. And so I was a little proud of myself for holding back and directing, which is the role of the Gestalt therapist, as opposed to interpreting, because it's really Sydney's experience to interpret.
That's true, although, of course, therapists always make some kind of decision. And I noticed that you went with anxiety and you didn't go with shame, things he mentioned.
Right, and I, you know, I don't even remember making that decision.
Yeah.
But I actually, in retrospect, I feel better about going with anxiety. I think that would be easier than to try to do both at once or to go with shame first.
Yeah.
You know, another thing that happened is that I had Sydney, I had him talk to his anxiety. And I'm just curious about what you thought of that.
Well, I liked it. It's a great technique, and I think the empty chair and the talking is always very interesting. I don't think Sydney went super deep, and we really heard the voice of his anxiety. We heard Sydney as anxiety, but still, I thought it was pretty helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sydney is really very good at sort of taking on the voice of those different entities inside himself.
Yeah. And in this next section, we're going to watch some dream work where you ask Sydney to take on the voice of the different parts of the dream, which classic Gestalt, isn't it?
And it's not easy often for clients to
Right.
do that. So watch to see how Sydney does with it. One thing we didn't do with the dream, because you went through it speaking first person, but what you didn't do was we didn't give you a chance to try on some of the entities in the dream. And so what I'd like you to do now, if you're okay with it,
Okay.
is to go back through the dream, and I'll just prompt you to put on the different entities and to be the different parts of the dream.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
So, are you ready?
Yeah, I think so.
Deep breath. How about you begin and you are the canoe? I
Okay.
know that seems kind of funny,
Okay.
but just say, I am the canoe.
Okay.
And I'm...
Okay, I am the canoe, and I'm going down the river, downstream. I have two paddlers sitting within me. I'm not sure if they know what they're doing or not. And they start to turn me a little bit sideways to the current, and I start to tip over to the side just a bit.
I am tipping over.
I am tipping over, and as I'm tipping over, I begin to fill with water from the left side, and it starts pouring over my side, and I'm filling with water. Then I start to level off and come back to a upright position, and I reorient, and I'm floating downstream.
I'm filling with water. I'm filled partway with water.
Almost all the way, three-quarters.
Almost all filled with water.
Almost all filled with water. 3/4 of the way filled with water.
And how does that feel as a canoe to be almost filled with water?
heavy.
I feel heavy.
Burdened. Burdened, yeah, and heavy.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Unwieldy.
I feel unwieldy, burdened, heavy.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And as you say those words, does that connect with anything for you?
I think it connects with moments that I experience. Heavy, burdened, unwieldy, not so much, but heavy and burdened. And I would say not in the big picture of my life, but right now it's near the end of the semester. It's a sort of a crunch time for me, and I feel heavy and burdened.
Yeah.
Definitely, you know, the last week or two, and sort of anticipating that it will continue for another 2 weeks. That heaviness and that burden of having, and I guess the metaphor there is sort of having more than I can manage, which is what the canoe is experiencing.
Just kind of drifting down the river now.
Yeah, and overflowing, as it were, with the burden, with the heaviness in a way.
I'm overflowing with the burden.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And still heading down the river.
And still, following the path of least resistance in some way, it seems, or going with the flow of what the environment is telling me.
Yeah.
The river is saying you need to go this way, which is the direction of the current, and it's going to be a lot of work to go in the other direction. And even though you may be heavy and burdened, that's the direction we're going to encourage you or push you in, even. Yeah.
And the burden right now feels like all the stuff that you have on your plate toward the end of the semester.
That's right. Yeah.
And now let's just shift a little bit, and you become the river.
Okay.
I am the river.
Okay. I am the river. I'm flowing. I'm dynamic. I'm pushing all sorts of things downstream. Canoes, sticks, bugs, debris, rocks. I'm flowing. I'm moving. I'm a little bit murky. My clarity is not that good. To come full circle to clarity, it's a little murky. I have a lot of different features. There's places of calm water, places of faster water, places where there's log jams, obstructions, rocks.
There's a lot. There's a lot to me.
There's a lot. I'm diverse. I'm diverse and dynamic and changing.
What's it feel to say that?
It feels, the first thing that it feels is this connection with what I just mentioned about anticipating the next 2 weeks to be busy. The first thing that I felt was sort of this connection with how rivers change with the season, how the snow melts and they come up and they flow big and swollen and lack of clarity. They're murky, you can't see as well, and they're more brown, and more debris is floating down as the runoff collects all those things.
There's so much going on that it's murky.
Yeah. And then as the season progresses, the water level starts to lower. It becomes more tranquil, calmer. You can look into it and see fish over here and the bottom over here. So the clarity of the river increases as that period of time of that is a natural changing of the seasons sort of waxes and wanes.
Yeah.
Do
you have a part of the year that feels more clear to you and still?
Yeah, I think the summer.
Yeah.
I think the summer does, yeah.
Okay. Let's take one more object in the dream and explore it a little bit, if that's okay.
Okay.
How about you become the other paddler?
Okay.
I am in the front of the boat, and Sydney is behind me.
I laugh because the first thing that pops into my awareness is the comment, I don't know what I'm doing, and it sounds like Sydney doesn't know what he's doing either.
Yeah.
He's not telling me what to do in a way that makes sense,
Yeah.
that is clear. So to speak from that perspective of that paddler, I'm confused, I'm frightened, I have the tools that I need, such as this paddle in my hand, but I don't have the internal tools, such as the knowledge and skill that I need. And the person that I'm looking to for that isn't being effective in transmitting that knowledge and skill to me. And I also feel, as the first paddler, some sense of, oh well, like a little bit, like those things are true that I said, not having the skill, but oh well, are the consequences that great? Almost as if I don't really, either I don't know what the consequences are, sort of an ignorance is bliss thing. I don't know that it's a big deal to flip the canoe and perhaps capsize and all of that. But just that, yeah, it's no big deal.
Okay.
I'll just roll with it.
You'll just roll with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't have the skills I need. I'm not getting great help. And yet I'm not terribly upset about this or concerned. I have a little bit of an ignorance is bliss attitude. Does that connect to anything in your life?
Yeah. The last piece of that, the sort of I'll just roll with it.
Watching the clip with Sydney just made me think, wow, he was a darn good client. He was able to take on the characters and the objects in the dream. He played the role of the canoe and did it without missing a beat.
Yeah, that was great. And even though I was a little bit skeptical about the voice he gave to anxiety, I think it helped. I think we sensed some integration at the end, which is, of course, one of the values that Gestalt therapy has, is that integration.
And theoretically, integration leads to energy and the desire to make contact and move forward in a healthy way in life.